Boards from 31 sports federations in the country have given Nigeria's Minister of Youth and Sports Development, Sunday Dare, 48 hours to reinstate the dissolved executives of sports federations. Representatives of the board in a meeting in Abuja says minister's actions are illegal. They've also threatened to go to court if he fails to comply.
On no account will the caretaker committee be recognized by the international bodies of the various sport federations in place of the duly elected boards. The federation noted that the Minister of Youth and Sports and Federal Ministry of Youth and Sport Development lied when they claimed that the tenure of the board have expired.
The code of governance that they were relying or they relied on to dissolve these boards, nowhere from A to Z, it has 19 sections there. There is none that talked about dissolution of the federations and also caretaker committees, if that is it.
Well, GARA Gombe there, a sports administrator. And of course, he joins us now to take a look at these developing stories. Thank you so much, Mr. Gombe, for joining us tonight in the studio. Let's get a clear picture as to what's going on right now with the dissolution of these boards. Because according to the ministers, he says the tenure of these committees had expired. Is that the true picture? Because looking at what you had said, and even other members of those committees that had that press conference, they said this is an illegal act by the minister.
Yes, actually, there is serious, if I may put it, illegality. The minister has no powers to dissolve the boards. The tenure of the federations, not all, had expired because all of them were inaugurated in July. And your tenure starts from the day you are inaugurated. The full cycle of their tenure is supposed to end in July. Now we are in May. So it's really wrong for him to have dissolved them. Usually the tradition is that you dissolve the federations for elections after the Olympics. In fact, it is really even unthinkable when we are talking about few months to Olympics to dissolve federations, because these are the federations that are supposed to be preparing the athletes for it. Now, let's go back to the fact that he said he was relying on the Code of Governance, the Code of Governance to dissolve the vote. The Code of Governance has never talked about dissolution. From A to Z of the Code of Governance has never talked of dissolution. And this Code of Governance is just an instrument that was prepared before the federations have their own status and their own constitutions. The day they have their own constitutions and they have their own status, the Code of Governance becomes null and void. And these constitutions and the status of these federations, they have provisions for transition from one board to another, when the tenure is end, what happens when the tenure finishes, and rest of it. So just because you have problems with one or two federations, then you decided to wake up one day and say you have dissolved all these federations. And look at it. When you dissolve, you appoint a caretaker. The same people, 95% of the people appointed into this same caretaker committee were the ones who were managing the federations before. So just to underline the fact that it was a personal vendetta, it was wrong.
But from the information we've actually garnered, it says most of those who are returned as a chairman of caretaker committees are actually those in charge of the sports that we qualified for the Olympics. Can you confirm that to us?
Why? Yes, some of them had qualified, some did not. And if you said you are returning them because their federations have qualified for the this Olympics, why don't you allow them to go back to the Olympics and come back? Then you can dissolve everybody.
Okay, now let's try and understand this a bit better. Federations have affiliation to international federations globally.
Yes.
Does it mean that they are independent of government, or they are agencies of the federal government and agencies of Ministry of Sports, Youth and Development?
Good. You see, sports federations are supposed to be independent associations. That is a global practice. In fact, let me even remind us, the same Code of Governance the minister was relying on clearly stated that one of the purpose of establishing it that time, it was established in 2017, was to manages the federations within the best international practice. Dissolving federations just by a minister of the Federal Republic, appointing caretaker committee by the minister of the Federal Republic is not in line with the international best practice. Now, these federations are supposed to be independent organizations affiliated to their continental bodies and intercontinental bodies. They have their own constitutions, they have their own rules, they have their own regulations. Just like the NFF, Nigerian Football Federation, or Nigerian Football Association, because NFF is not known to law, Nigerian Football Association, he cannot dissolve NFF because FIFA will never accept it. You understand? And that is why he can now easily dissolve federations, because some of these, their international bodies, either they are weak or they act in a very slow manner to protect their local distant affiliates. And that is where we have problem. I kept on saying, why do we have to establish football by law? Why do we have to establish football by law? If you establish football by law, you must have to establish football, or basketball, table tennis, and other sports also by law. And that is where we have a serious problem today in this country.
That's another school of thoughts, because some would say, you know, the NFF, you know, it's backed by law. It has its own legal statutes. But a lot of these other federations don't really even have a registration, even with the CAC. And of course, that probably is the reason why we're seeing a minister wield some sort of powers. But as we get ready to wrap up this conversation, how will all of this issues going on right now really affect our chances at the Olympics, which is just around the corner?
Whether the federations are even not dissolved or not, our chances in the Olympics have already been jeopardized by the actions of the minister, various actions that the minister has taken. That one aside. Now, this is someone who recently said the Mr. President has declared sports as a business. Okay, fine. Sports has always been a business. We don't need a president to declare it as a public statement. Again, how do you then allow, how do you expect now individuals to come and invest in sports as a business when you can wake up from your bedroom, come to the office and dissolve federations like that? Nobody is going to now come. So the best thing now is to allow these federations independently to go and organize themselves, like Rotary and Red Cross. They are private organizations. Perhaps just come to government if need be and apply for grants when they are representing Nigeria. And that is how it should be. The ministry has no business to even organize competitions for the federations. How
do you see this ending now, just before we go? How do you see it ending? Do you see a situation where the federations, those who are disbanded, will go to court?
Our only saving grace, as I know as at now, is because the courts are on strike. If the courts are back, I can tell you so many people will be flooding the courts with all sorts of litigations, and that's going to happen. Then the international affiliates of these federations are studying the situation. Rugby has already banned Nigeria from participating in all rugby activities from continent, and I'm sure the international one, this is the African body, the international one also will follow suit, and many many others would definitely also go into.
So how can we get it right in a few seconds? What can we do now to just
We need a presidential intervention. I think the minister is making a serious mistake, and if allowed unchecked, will jeopardize Nigerian sports in so many ways. We need a presidential intervention to work out this, or even the National Assembly. I don't know why the National Assembly are keeping quiet. Sometimes when there are crises like this, the parliament has a power to summon. We have been seeing them summoning ministers, summoning also. Why are they? Why this conspiracy of silence from the National Assembly to discuss this issue?
Of course,
they are representing
we'll
our
watch
people.
and see how this whole thing really goes. GARA Gombe, a sports administrator, will have to say thank you so much for joining us tonight in the studio.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much.